Now, social media is a new battlefield in today's world. One post can trigger a domino effect for the worst, and similarly, a single post can make someone an overnight sensation. But today's debate is not about who got famous and who didn't. It's about how Twitter is suing Government of India over its takedown orders. First, the social media giant objected to the Indian government's policies and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Then it failed to comply with Government of India's takedown orders and now is suing the Government of India for alleged abuse of power. Let's tell you how it all started. Now, the Modi government had asked Twitter to take down misleading content related to farmers' protest and farm laws. This after a new IT Act was brought in to keep a check on insightful, hateful and fake news propaganda.
सोशल मीडिया एक बहुत ही पावरफुल मीडियम है, हमारी लाइफ में आज बहुत बड़ा प्रभाव है। इसकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी कैसे हो, ये क्वेश्चन दुनिया में सब जगह अभी एक बहुत ही वैलिड क्वेश्चन बन चुका है। सोशल मीडिया को अकाउंटेबल करना ज़रूरी है। कैसे अकाउंटेबल करें? सबसे पहले सेल्फ रेगुलेशन, किस तरह से खुद ही कुछ ऐसे कंटेंट जिन कंटेंट से सोसाइटी में एक हार्मफुल इम्पैक्ट आता है उसको खुद ही दूर करें। फिर इंडस्ट्री रेगुलेशन, फिर गवर्नमेंट रेगुलेशन। तो हर तरह का एक ऐसा इकोसिस्टम, ऐसा थॉट प्रोसेस अभी बन रहा है दुनिया में सब जगह और देश में भी, अपने यहाँ भी, कि सोशल मीडिया शुड बी अकाउंटेबल।
Now, when the farmers' protest was being held at the Delhi borders, the BJP MP Tejasvi Surya had written to the Prime Minister seeking effective regulation of content on social media. So the government issued notice to Twitter seeking removal of such posts which were deemed inflammatory. But heated arguments ensued between the Government of India and Twitter to take down the content. Multiple directives were issued to curb inflammatory tweets, but Twitter failed to comply with the government's directives. Inflammatory posts continue to swell the microblogging site, fueling fire during major agitations. After a year and a half of this friction, Twitter has now filed a suit in the Karnataka High Court challenging the centre's takedown orders. Is stopping or taking down inflammatory posts abuse of power, as Twitter claims? Now, this is the legitimate question that we are asking tonight.
You're watching the News Hour at 9, debate number 2 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, joining us for more on this, we have Shehzad Poonawalla, national spokesperson of the BJP. Suhail Seth is author and columnist joining us from London. We also have with us Dr. Suman Raman. Dr. Suman Raman, simple question to you. Is stopping or taking down a tweet or a post that can be inflammatory in nature, is that really something that can be construed to be abuse of power? Do you believe so? If yes, why? If no, why?
Madhav, first of all, we have to understand that Twitter has had a problem with this in multiple countries, where it has been asked by regimes, often repressive regimes, to take down posts on a selective basis of those who are critical of the regime. Now, Twitter has been trying to handle this on a country-by-country basis. Originally, once they started removing posts on their own, they lost the moral authority to call themselves a mere platform. And since then, it's been one problem after the other. Now, I was very surprised that they did not go to court against the IT rules of 2021. That itself was a big. And they dragged their feet about appointing the grievance officer and so on. And finally, at some point, there was some kind of compliance which was sort of achieved. Now, in this particular case, I think they have a valid point in the sense that here is the government who is coming and saying that these are the posts or these are the handles which have to be, either suspended or the tweets removed and so on. And the decision of what is inflammatory and what is not often tends to be quite selective. And we've seen many such cases in the past as well. So where there is a selective, approach to the problem, I think Twitter is justified in seeking a legal remedy. That's all they've done. They've gone to court.
It's a selective approach. Your charge is that it's a selective approach, a potentially selective approach. And let me bring in Suhail Seth on that. Suhail Seth, what if what the government is asking for is only selective in nature or is being done with some kind of quote-unquote political intent? I think that appears to be the sum and substance of Suman Raman's argument. So Twitter is justified in going to court, he says. Your response?
So I have a lot of respect for Suman, but let me counter the logic. Number one, no one has invited Twitter to India, so they can't determine what they will do within the constitutional framework of our country. B, every government, whether it is repressive or benign, has the right to control any media that might inflame passions, that might incite people to riot, or create religious or political, not political, but more religious or societal disharmony. Number three, Twitter, if you realize, was the only offending social media platform because our politicians also first made Twitter feel as if they were the sole guardians of morality and freedom of expression and speech. Number four, absolutely, Twitter has every right to go to court. But that doesn't mean every court must listen to Twitter because there's some extra constitutional authority across the world. Sumant is absolutely wrong when he says it's only repressive regimes. When these guys on Twitter tried to create a scare outside around Omicron, the latest version, on May 21, Singapore slammed it. Now you'll call Singapore repressive. That way there are no non-repressive regimes. I have a very simple view. There is a constitution, there is a law, the law is laid out. You don't like the law, don't come here. If you like the law and you want to counter the law, obviously go to court. I have no issues about Twitter going to court. It is the right of every organization, individual, association, NGO, non-NGO to go to court if they feel that the laws are against their fundamental area of operation.
Right.
But to say that Twitter must be allowed a free run is equally preposterous.
All right.
I don't believe that any organization must be allowed a free run. It must work within the tenets of Indian law.
Well, absolutely. Business must be carried out as per the law of the land. One second, Mr. Raman. Let me bring in others as well. Sarah Shah Halim and Shehzad are also with us. Sarah Shah Halim, there's a simple point being made here by Suhail Seth, because what he's really, in a sense, trying to say is that there is a law of the land. Organizations such as Twitter cannot claim to be holier than thou. They cannot, they will have to abide by whatever regulations and law has been put in place by the government at least. Sarah Shah Halim. All right, I think we've lost that line there with Sarah Shah Halim. Quick response to Sumant. Sumant, I think we've lost that line with Sarah Shah Halim. Take that question, please.
The point is the law must be applied equally and fairly to all. That is the only reason why Twitter is going to court. If they felt that the law was being applied fairly and all sides, were being treated alike, it's extremely unlikely that Twitter would have gone to court against this. It is obviously for this reason, and I don't think I think Suhail also agreed that they have a right to go to court. They have chosen to exercise that right. And also we have to understand that India needs these platforms as much as those platforms need India. So social media today, you saw the disastrous experiment which the government tried with coup, which never really took off. So we are a society which has increasingly adopted social media for a variety of activities, and it's not just for news consumption, but a whole lot of other things as well, for entertainment and so on. Now, we need these global platforms as much as the global platforms need the Indian market. So let's not kid ourselves. We have to work on a via media. We have to ensure that there is a fair interpretation of the law. That is all that Twitter is asking, and they've chosen their legal.
That interpretation is neither yours nor Twitter's. It belongs to the people who wear black robes and sit on benches and provide dispensation of justice.
And that is why they have gone there.
Correct, which is fine. But don't make it out to seem, no, 1 minute. There is an issue here. The issue is we are making it out to seem that, oh my God, Twitter has dragged the country to court as if we have created some marvelously grave injustice on Twitter. That is rubbish. Twitter has every right to go to court. Every individual has the right to go to court, and let's see what happens. Okay. It's not that Twitter must be treated with kid gloves. I know Shehzad is now dying to say something.
Yeah. Let me come in here. And in fact, there's a question for Shehzad. Shehzad, one of the points that is being made repeatedly by Sumant C. Raman and those who are critical of the government as far as its handling of social media is concerned is that they repeatedly say that in April 2021, the centre had requested Twitter to take down 52 tweets that were critical of the handling of the pandemic crisis. So the question is that in a democratic country like India, there has to be space for criticism and dissent as well. And that is where Sumant C. Raman comes in to say that it could be misused for political purposes. That potential misuse is still there as far as the current provisions are concerned, is what he's saying. Your response to that, Shehzad?
Madhav, I hope I won't be interrupted when I make my entire statement on this. Thank you. Firstly, let's have a context. These intermediary guidelines or rules were not brainchild just of the current government. In fact, even people like Jairam Ramesh, when they headed a parliamentary panel, and other Congress leaders have demanded this, supported it, and they wanted stronger laws to regulate social media. Point number one. Point number two, social media companies are like intermediaries or platform, and they can enjoy the benefit of the protection from liability under Section 79 of the IT Act if they perform themselves as an intermediary, as a platform, not as super editor. If they start becoming super editor like Times Now editor, then they have to follow rules that Times Now follows. It cannot be discrimination between Times Now, which has a greater responsibility and therefore gets the ability to behave like an editor, but you will be behaving like an editor, but you will not have the responsibility of Times Now channel. That can't continue. Thirdly, you follow rules in America, you follow rules in United States, Kingdom, you follow rules in Europe, but when it comes to India, you say, I will not follow the rules. Then sorry, other social media companies are following, you also have to follow this, and if you have a problem, you can go to court of law, but you cannot say that I have a special exception that I will not follow the rules of India, while I will go and follow the rules of the white man in United States or in United Kingdom. And finally, this is only about takedown notices that have been issued as per the IT. Please do not interrupt, sir. I have been introduced late into this debate. Have the patience. Don't behave like a troll. Lastly, it is Rahul, like for instance, Rahul Gandhi. Last time when his account was blocked, when, can I please complete, Madhav?
Make your point.
When Rahul Gandhi's account was blocked, Rahul Gandhi comes out and says that Twitter has glaring double standards. Sometimes they say it is the shining bastion of free speech. Sometimes they criticize Twitter for having double standards. The intermediary guidelines are there in place so that all people who are subject to, who are using social media or who can benefit or are affected by social media can have a recourse.
Okay.
What is the problem if the constitutional setup which all other people are following is also being asked to be followed for Twitter?
How can there be different yardsticks? One second. Sarah Shah Halim has spoken. Please let her come in now. Let her come in now. Please, she's the only lady on the panel. She hasn't yet spoken. Sarah Shah Halim, simple question. I think 2 points that have been made over here. One is that how can the opposition have two standards? One, either Twitter is claimed to be biased, pro-government, and when it suits the opposition, then it is said that it is in fact being misused by the government. Point number one. Point number two is that can Twitter come to India where there are social media regulations, where there are laws, and say that it will be holier than thou, that it will be above all of this?
See, I'll make it very clear that Twitter is an international so-called perpetrated platform of free speech. And here, what is ironic is that the teeth and claws of fascism, expressed are felt at the throat of those who want free speech. It is again ironic that here the government uses this platform to advocate its policies, for campaigning at various elections in the various states. It tries to throttle through various mediums, people who are critical of the government policies. And at the same time, he uses this very platform, like some the underbelly of the establishment uses this platform to spread hate, which is so tragic. And here, I think a so-called platform, which advocates free speech, should give a platform for everybody, whether you're criticizing the government or whether you're pro-government or whatever. And here it's nothing anti-national, or I think it's not to do with security issues. It's more about throttling free speech. And I think it's time that here the government needs to enable free speech as long as it's in the interest of the nation. Now, again, I'm emphasizing, criticizing the policy is not a national threat. It's not a security issue. And I think the government needs to be brought up now.
What is a specific problem? What is a specific legal problem in this current issue which Twitter has taken to the court? Can you explain that? Because you're speaking in these generalities. What is a specific problem in what has happened in this round when Twitter has gone to the court there in Karnataka? What is the issue that you have with this particular case? Why are you in support of Twitter? What is the problem over here? Can you make it very clear for our viewers?
I'm not in support of Twitter. I'm not in support of anybody. All I'm simply trying to say that if a platform says that it is an open platform where it invites all kind of voices, The Twitter has basically approached the Karnataka High Court, which has challenged the certain notices that have been issued by the union government to remove posts and content which they feel are against the interests of the nation. So
Yes.
Twitter is only challenging that.
If it's implementary, you don't want the platform to be used for implementary purposes, and that is what the centre says it's doing.
No,
What's the issue here?
Inflammatory content should be removed. I agree. But here what is happening is it's not an issue of national security. Here, prominent people are being arrested for a tweet that dated back, say, from 1983.
Okay.
And all kinds of bizarre charges are being leveled against these people just because they seem to use this platform openly to advocate their views, their thoughts, to criticize, to critique
one
the
minute
government.
now,
Okay. Sarah Shalim, you made your point. Now, Suhail Seth wants to come in. I'm going to bring the BJP spokesperson also. Suhail Seth.
Elon Musk famously said that one reason why he was withdrawing from the deal was because of the bot community on Twitter. And I mean BOT as well as BOUGHT, for those whose spelling may be weak. Number two, no one's point is that freedom of speech or expression must be throttled. Number three, you cannot promote any kind of hashtag which seems to suggest that the nation is burning when it is not. If it is burning, then promote it. But when it is not burning, you can't. Number four, these are takedown notices that have been issued. No one is saying Twitter must be throttled or, thrown into the Arabian Sea. People are saying that if there is a law of the land, and if everyone adheres to it, so must you. Number five, and this is the important point, the definition and the interpretation of the law must be left to people who decide on matters of jurisprudence, which is why going to court is not the issue. But imagining that you must have immunity from going to a court and you must have insulation from saying whatever the hell you want, that is unacceptable. To my mind, it's a very clear black and white. Sumant, why don't you allow people to finish? I'll finish, you speak. This constant interruption is ridiculous.
Okay,
so
make your point.
Let me finish. My point is very simple, which I started with. Every platform, whether it is intermediary or interdependent, must follow the law of the land. Number two, I have no issues with freedom of speech. I have issues with fake news, which result in incendiary activities such as arson, looting, riots.
Right.
That's my worry. Anything that impacts national security, the government has to take action. Otherwise, we'll have an impotent government.
Sorry, I have to interrupt because we're completely out of time. Sumansi Raman, Shahzad Poonawala, Sarah Shah Halim, and Suhail Seth. This is clearly going to be a contentious issue, and this is one case that everyone's going to be watching out for very closely. What will the courts do? Will it entertain the petitioner of Twitter, or will it completely throw it out? That's something that we have to watch out for in coming days. Thanks so much for joining us on the News Hour this evening.